Growing pains of our youth. We will get through this. During these times of social distancing, do all you can to maintain your physical, mental, and emotional welfare. Your family and the community needs you to emerge strong. Hashtag stay home, K-Man.
Burger King has been your family restaurant for many years. Bringing you delicious food in a safe environment has always been our number one priority. And until further notice, you'll only be able to visit us via drive-thru.
Get your motor running, pulling out past Red Bay, looking for a BK at whatever time of day. Burger King drive-thru.
Burger King's drive-thru is open at 7 Mile Beach, Waterfront Georgetown, Walkers Road, or Red Bay for breakfast, lunch, or dinner.
Roll back. Roll back. Every Wednesday and Thursday, all Rubus stations are rolling back the price on all fuel purchases by 20 cents. Every customer will save 20 cents on every gallon of fuel purchased on Wednesday and Thursday. Every customer. Only at Rubus. Roll back. Roll back.
The Island Heritage Insurance Office is currently closed to walk-in customers per their COVID-19 response protocol. However, they are still available to handle your business via their website at islandheritage.com.ky. Email at customercare@islandheritage.com.ky for general inquiries, and claims at islandheritage.com.ky for general insurance claims. Island Heritage. Experience insurance the Island Heritage way.
Live from Star 927 Studios in the center of Cayman's capital city, Georgetown. This is Straight Talk with Ruth Anna.
Good evening, everybody. You are tuned into Straight Talk, brought to you exclusively by Star 92.7 Premium Radio. I am your host, Ruth Anna Young, always honored to be your host here on Straight Talk every Monday through Thursday from 5 to 6 p.m. right here and nowhere else other than Star 92.7. It is 5:02 on the Star 92.7 clock, and it's the 13th of May, and we are joining me this afternoon is going to be Mr. Alric Lindsay. He and I have some things that are on our mind that we want to discuss and about our way forward, which is going to be the tone of a lot of my conversation over the coming weeks. What next? How do we reopen? What do we do to stimulate our economy as we transition through these months with what is proposed to be a domestic-only economy and eventually looking to reopen to the wider world? So he is joining me in the virtual studio this afternoon. 943-3700 is the line in studio. You can also WhatsApp me 324-1565, or you can email me at straighttalkci@gmail.com. We are also streaming live video from the Star 92.7 Facebook page. So shout out to all of you who are already locked in via Facebook. Miss Yvette, thank you for sending in your love. Michael Miles, thank you for tuning in. Kathy Ann, good to see you. Mr. Jason, thank you for locking it in. Miss Janet, thank you guys for locking it in this afternoon on Facebook. And for all of you who are listening on the radio, thank you for your continued loyalty and listenership to Straight Talk. But you guys know the deal. Before we go any further here on Straight Talk, we always start our time together with the reading of today's Daily Bread. So today's Daily Bread is entitled Photobombing Jesus, and the scripture comes from John 3 verse 30 and reads, "He must become greater, I must become less." When my pastor asked our class a difficult question about the life of Jesus, my hand shot up. I had just read the story, so I knew this one, and I wanted the others in the room to know that I knew it too. After all, I'm a Bible teacher. How embarrassing it would be to be stumped in front of them. Now I was embarrassed by my fear of embarrassment, so I lowered my hand. Am I this insecure? John the Baptist shows a better way. When his disciples complained that people were beginning to leave him and follow Jesus, John said he was glad to hear it. He was merely the messenger. I am not the Messiah, but I am sent ahead of him. He must become greater. I must become less. John realized the points of his existence was Jesus. He is the one who comes from heaven and is above all, the divine Son who gave his life for us. He must receive all the glory and the fame. Any attention drawn to ourselves distracts from God, and since He is our only Savior and the only hope for the world, any credit we steal from Him ends up hurting us. Let's resolve to step out of the picture, to stop photobombing Jesus. It's best for Him, for the world, and for us. Thanks be to God for that word today. As always, here on Straight Talk, we remind you, we encourage you to spend time each and every day focused on His word, meditating on His grace and how awesome He is. With that, I invite Mr. Alric Lindsay into our conversation here this afternoon. Certainly no stranger to the Straight Talk studio. Alric, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you? And
I
thanks for having me. And good evening to all your guests, everyone on Facebook and listening on the radio.
I'm doing well. Thank you. Miss Yvette says good evening to Ruthanna and Alric Lindsay. Thank you so much for tuning in. I see Ashley Watler coming in there. Thank you guys for tuning in this afternoon. Please feel free to list any of your questions, comments, or concerns. You can also leave them in the live Facebook stream. And I will always read them out or pose the questions as well on air. So you can leave comments there. And so I see that your barber is still not at work, right?
My barber has contacted me and has offered ways to, cut my hair. But, I don't want to take that chance and break the rules. So I'm just that's what it's about, though.
Mm-hmm.
The temptation you have, if it's not allowed, then you just do it. And you're doing this for the greater good. So you got to stay safe and follow the rules. And, we guys got to take our time to get through this,
Absolutely. Jamie Montero, thank you for tuning in. He says, good afternoon to you too. Good evening to you as well, Jamie. And, I know that, you and I stay in relatively, consistent communication. So I know you've been quite busy, with the work of Cayman Food Bank and all of the efforts that are unrolling there. And we've talked about that a lot, but we're definitely going to talk this evening about some of the challenges and the discussions we face as we plan to a continued reopening domestically, and looking at the medium term as well, the medium to long term opportunities to open up on an international level as we seek to exit this global pandemic whenever that is possible. And in your, I guess, your day to day and the consistent interactions you're having directly in the trenches, right, in the community, and all that I'm sure you're seeing and experiencing right now, what are some of the greatest challenges that you see arising in the community out of this?
Well, I think overall there's a lot of fear, and there's fear in different areas. If you look at the tourism industry, for example, and the travel industry, there's a lot of fear and uncertainty regarding community spread. So if we open the borders to allow travel, for example, just give an example, then there's a risk of, a tourist coming here, and, if that tourist, has the virus, or if it was missed for some reason, and then there could be community spread here, and we have such a small community, community spread is a real thing. Especially if someone doesn't appear to have symptoms, a tourist could be
largely what we're seeing, right?
A tourist could be going into so many different establishments and restaurants, all these other places that could reopen. So when it comes to the travel industry, the fear of air travel is going to exist for a long time, and for a number of years, because there have been a lot of discussions about how airlines are going to adjust, and whether there's going to be self check-in, and whether they're going to reduce the contact, and how they're going to test people before they board flights, et cetera, et cetera. So people try to compare COVID to 9/11, but COVID is a lot worse than 9/11, because with 9/11, at least they could identify the threat somehow, or identify the group somehow. But with COVID, you just don't know, who might have it, and it could be the person right next to you. So when it comes to travel, we have that fear and uncertainty of air travel. When it comes to cruise ships, it's the same thing. How are we going to manage cruise ships going forward? We know that cruise ships do business in Cayman, and tour operators and other parties do benefit from cruise ships to some extent. What I would like to see is in relation to cruise ships is for us to acknowledge some of the damage that they've also caused. If you look at the facts, these are not rumors. It was a cruise ship that actually brought our first known COVID case and death. And I think we need to look at that and look at how the cruise ship CEOs behaved after we decided to close our borders to protect our people. When we made that decision to protect our people and close the borders, we could see the reaction of the cruise ship CEOs was they sort of wanted to threaten us to say, well, we're not going to stop in Cayman. Yes. And to look at those things going forward. And we need to charter our own destiny as a people and as a country. And when it comes to making contracts with true cruise ships in the future, I know that a lot of these tours are booked on the cruise, on the ship, or together with the booking. And I understand that the cruise ship may get 80% or more or 75% or more of that tour price. In my view, I think it's okay for you to book anywhere you want to book, but the tour operator or the person on the ground in Cayman needs to get a substantial part of that revenue. And when I say that, I mean 75% or more. In my view, if you're doing all the work on the ground in Cayman, you should be getting 75% or more. So when we go back to the drawing table, if we ever deal with cruise ships again, we need to make sure our tour operators, there are a lot of people in the West Bay, for example, who are sitting at home right now, who really depend on the tour industry and the cruise industry. Those people are really struggling right now. If you drive through West Bay, you will see the number of tour buses, just parked in the yard, not doing anything. Those people are hard workers, and those people want to go back to work. They don't want to take anything from any group like that. They just want the ability to just go back to work. But my thing is, if we do invite the cruise ships back here again, we just need to have a better deal in place for our local tour operators, and we need to deal with the issue of pollution that is caused by cruise ships, the dumping of waste in the ocean, et cetera, et cetera. So we need to look at these things, and I think now is the time to look at those types of things, and now is the time to think about what kind of deal we want with those cruise ships going forward. And when you look at the financial services industry, we see the various economic and financial problems. We see the loss in the value of financial assets. We see the loss in the value of pensions. We see because of business slowdowns and business closures, we see there's a lot of job insecurity. We see there's a lot of job loss. So when we're thinking about reopening, yes, we do think about our pillars, the travel industry and the financial services industry. We think about those two pillars, but we also need to understand what the plan is in relation to both of those things to reopen. I don't think they're going to reopen at the same time. I think financial services will be easier to open because in many cases, a lot of the work in financial services can be done via email, via telephone, because a lot of the clients in financial services are actually based in countries. Yeah. So when it comes to reopening, just to give an example for financial services, I could see a law firm or an accounting firm having a small skeleton staff at the office, but I don't think a full staff is needed in all of those buildings. I think if you have skeleton staff that allowed you to, go do photocopying or get courier packages out or anything else that's needed on a very admin basis in the office, then I say yes. Have a small skeleton staff. Have all those people tested. Have all those people subject to regular testing because the virus could reoccur. So if you have employees tested, if employees employees volunteer to be tested once a month or something like that on a periodic basis, then there'll be some comfort regarding their exposure while there's a skeleton staff at one of these financial services firms. So in my opinion, if you have a skeleton staff there and you have the majority of your employees still working at home in financial services, I think the financial services system could continue to flourish. I think.
Sorry to cut you there. Some comments have come in over the course of this dialogue, and so I want to catch some of them before you shift thoughts, right? So of course, some shout outs. Ms. Carlita Watler says, "Good evening to all." Shirley Ralston says, "Hi, my heroes." And I think this was to your earlier sentiment, Alric. So Jamie Montero says, "I totally agree. Cruise and air travel will change forever for years to come. We need to be tourists in our own island." And I know that I want to say it's New Zealand and a few other places have started to already encourage domestic tourism. How important do you think that's going to be for us?
How important is
domestic tourism?
Yeah, I think if you look at the studies, a friend of mine sent me some of these studies, and staycations are going to be the thing. According to the studies, more people are going to be looking. When you look at bigger countries, they're looking at domestic travel within their country. In Japan and small islands, we'll be looking at staycations, even Airbnb. So we're going to be looking for, if we're going to take a break, we're either going to go to Cayman Brac or Little Cayman, and that's the furthest we're going to go because they're pretty safe. So according to the studies, domestic travel is going to be the thing, at least up to December this year. And I guess if there's a cure or this thing just disappears, then international travel may open up before that. But according to current studies, we expect that staycations, investing in your own country, creating different avenues for tourism in your own country, creating different sites, so that if we have a fall in tourism again, we're not totally dependent on the international tourism. We have people here who are making contributions to our tourism product here, and investing in our tourism product here, and expanding on our tourism product here, and working on the uniqueness of Caymanian and making sure that Caymanian is back into what is expressed in the marketing and the way we do everything that is tourism.
And I will say to that, there was, and I read it, and I need to go back and look for the article, and I don't want to cite the wrong news source, but I know that a media house today published an article that I saw today regarding where some of the top destinations that people will try to want to travel to first, especially those with more disposable income and wanting to feel a sense of freedom after weeks and months of lockdowns and curfews and the such. And I'll find an article before we come off the air, possibly during the break. But Cayman was actually the top of their list. The Cayman Islands was the top of their list for the destination that people wanted to travel to, as a first travel spot. So that I thought was a bit of information for us, in that to know that we're still top of mind, even yes, there will be it'll be a very different scene entirely, but as we look to reopen to international travel, whatever that looks like, as we do it, at least we know that we are still top of mind. And I think it is, as you mentioned, such an opportunity for us to really strengthen and specialize our tourism product, so that we continue to be competitive in a very unique way. And next, coming in, another comment came in. Mr. Michael Miles says, "Hey guys, I have made attempts to engage the government on how we can get back our overseas travel. I have developed a partnership with an international consulting agency who have mapped out how we can do this. And Mr. Michael Miles, I certainly would, and I'll engage Michael off air as well, or he can also call in during the show. But I would be happy to have him come back into the studio, the virtual studio, to even share about what that might look like as well. And so that from Mr. Miles, Shirley Ralston says, we have to make the plan for the return of the cruise industry, not the cruise lines, and CIG needs to give operators a seat at the table in these discussions of plans. I would 110% agree with her. I do believe that it would be silly of us to have this opportunity at this juncture, despite the fact that you see cruise lines saying that bookings are up 600%. 600% from what? And yes, people are going to travel again, but what is that going to look like? And I think that for far too long we have allowed cruise lines to dictate what our people are going to get for their efforts, right? And how do you think we make that adjustment, Alric? I know you said very straight out you believe that it should be, those doing the bulk of the work should look at 75% as their cut to go home with. Do you think it's just that we have, from a government perspective, an industry perspective, have we just not cared to lobby hard enough to ensure a better stake for local operators? Like, why do you think it is that it's really been the reverse, that the cruise lines have walked away with 75-80% of the lion's share of the profits from the tours that our operators are conducting? Why do you think that is?
I think we haven't dug deep enough in this COVID experience. This point of considering the reopening is the point that we need to dig deep. You need to dig deep and look at what your value is, because each one of you out there has a value, whether you're in tourism, you're in financial services, if you're a plumber, you're an electrician, you're in construction, all of you have a value. And I think that that's what is missing, is that we are not appreciating what our high value is. We're allowing someone else to tell us what our value is, and that needs to reverse right now.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Michael Miles continues on and says, this is an opportunity to recession-proof our people. If not COVID, it would have been a hurricane or some world crisis that will impact our country. And hashtag too true is what I'll say to that. And I actually was speaking to someone, and, as I'm sure Michael had been on the show recently. And, I was saying to them, even if I think about many of and we're talking about young men and young women in the tourism sector and what that kind of looks like. And I said to them, what might be helpful, and we know construction is going to be one of the first large industries to come back online, and they've said that time and time again. Now, if my memory served me correct, and which is what I said to the person, I said, for instance, dive instructor certification at Michael's school, Inspire Cayman, takes 6 to 9 months, if my memory serves me correct. Now, we have a lot of our people in general who may not have any skills or qualifications in the construction industry, but I know that from my conversations with Michael, as using his institution as an example, there are a lot of things that kind of certain qualifications they can get in a few short months. And so because we know things like construction are going to come online first, why not start doing kind of trade or vocational training, even in a level 1 type of scenario or whatever that looks like, so that people have some entry level qualification and can be of some use on a construction site, right? So that they can benefit in the short term economy, right? Even, within a short period, get into the domestic economy, but then planning for those who would otherwise prefer careers in hospitality to, for example, get a certification as a dive instructor, which will take them longer, but it will put them in a position to be able to come online in that capacity when the industry is ready for them, right? So it's not them sitting around waiting for tourism to reopen before they're able to do much of anything, right? And to look at these shorter term qualifications. That was just one of the thoughts that I had around it. But when to Michael's comment regarding to recession proofing our people, what do you think what are some of the ways that we can look about doing that at this stage, Alric?
I think the overall thing you're talking about is human capital.
Mm-hmm.
And human capital is the development of our people is not something that we focus on for a long time. What we focus on for a long time is bringing in other humans and increasing their capital. That's what we focused on. So while many people have come to Cayman and become better and become successful, we have not done the same thing. The focus has not been on us in the same way. If the focus was us in the same way, then you would see a level playing field in Cayman where people step up from in hardship. But in the case of human capital, I think that, Inspire Cayman, which is run by Michael Miles, they provide courses, as you mentioned, a dive master, there's plumbing, electrical, there's automotive. There are all these jobs that, have to be done on a daily basis, which are not promoted in the schools. What we find that's being promoted is just banking. Let's be a banker, let's be an accountant, let's be a lawyer. We really need an avenue for all the skills. Why? Because if we're going to have construction, if there's a demand for more building, then we're going to need more workers with skills. Mm-hmm. Why not prepare our people to enter those markets where there's a demand, where there's an actual demand or a projected demand? Mm-hmm. Why not our people? So during COVID, while people are at home, everyone should know that Inspire Cayman is doing online courses in some areas. And as soon as it's safe to reopen, or as soon as a safe environment can be developed, then you can do the practical training at Inspire Cayman or some other place that's designated as safe by them. So, like I say, the overall thing to me is a human capital. We need to just refocus. We are at a point where certain industries are going to start to reopen. We hear about plans for construction. We really need to just do it now. Just if you're interested in construction, if you're interested in plumbing or something, all these things are connected to those big developments. So, instead of focusing on this one thing that you used to do, let's say you used to work in financial services. This is actually a great time to think about how could I retool. How could I make the transfer, regardless of what age I am, make the transfer into another industry. It may not be what I want to do. It might not be what I want to do, but it's something I need to do in order to make it in this new post-COVID period. So I think we need to sort of develop a new way of thinking. It's not about just banking. It's not about just being an accountant. It's about being a contributor to your country, a contributor to society, to your family, being a provider. And the only way that can happen is each of us takes a step, tries to get skilled in some area. It doesn't have to be in popular areas. As long as you're contributing to your family or contributing to the country, then just go for it. Go for those areas, get skilled, get a certificate, get a diploma, get some experience, get something. Once you get that something and you also know what your value is, then collectively, there's no one who could tell you then that you're not qualified to do this job, or you're not qualified to do that. Collectively, then everyone can say, we have all these skills, or we have all these certificates. Collectively speak together. Don't fall away as one person and you get picked off. So,
and I think that's the collectivity is a big part of it. Ms. Melinda says, I agree with Alric 110%. The Cayman operators need to call the shots and reverse what the cruise lines placed on them. Without Grand Cayman, they wouldn't have guests on their ships wanting to come here. We have the demand, not the cruise lines. And she continues on to say, we have the power, own it. If they did, they could stay out to sea. They wouldn't need to stop here. We, the excursion companies, need to be able to call the shots, and our government needs to assist with that to happen. If we have to have the cruise ships at all, if we had the support of our government, we would have more people, Caymanians, in the industry. And so that from Miss Melinda Maldonado. And I agree with her. I do believe that part of this is industry, the operators needing to come together. However, in the same way that government has spearheaded, most discussions with the cruise lines, because as a government you have far more clout, then they open the door and bring operators and representations of the industry to the table. And cruise lines, even we know that during all of the many discussions over the proposed cruise port project at the time, cruise lines themselves said that Cayman was a premium destination. It's the destinations that sell the routes, and I do believe that we need to display a little bit more strength based on our actual position that they have admitted that we have. But we are going out to our first break of our time together, so I don't want you to get into another thought and as we are transitioning out. But guys, Alric Lindsay will be with me until 6 o'clock this evening, and I will be right back in about 2 minutes or so. So I ask you to hang tight while we go out to this first break. Keep it locked for Straight Talk on Star 92.7.
The phone lines are now open. 943-3700. You can also find us on Facebook or email us at straighttalkci@gmail.com.
Don't let the actions of the few continue to impact the majority. If you know of someone who is taking unnecessary risks with social distancing and curfews, talk to them. Remind your siblings, children, parents, and friends of the importance of social distancing. We will all get through these challenging times, but only if we can all work together. #StayHomeCayman.
RBC clients, we want you to know that even when we're apart, we stand together across the Caribbean, united by a caring attitude and a sense of community, supporting each other through these challenging times. That's why we've created the RBC Client Relief Program for personal and business clients. We are Caribbean strong. For assistance, call our advice center or visit rbc.com/stand together. RBC Royal Bank, banking reimagined.
In this time of crisis, we are right here to help keep the power on.
We are here to serve you. We are committed to ensuring that you have electricity. Without electricity, not many things will work.
We are right here to help keep the power turned on.
We are CUC. You can count on us.
Flow is always committed to keeping Cayman connected, but especially during the current COVID-19 pandemic. To assist you while you work and learn from home, Flow is happy to provide you with a free upgrade to your current internet speed. Simply email our local customer care team at k-flowhelp@cwc.com to get your free internet speed upgrade today. Stay safe, Cayman. Flow, keeping Cayman connected. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back to Straight Talk with Ruth Anna on Star 927.
We are back, folks, and you are tuned into Straight Talk, brought to you exclusively by Star 92.7 Premium Radio. I am your host, Ruth Anna Young, with you until 6 o'clock this evening. I am joined this afternoon by Mr. Alric Lindsay, certainly no stranger to the Straight Talk microphones. And Alric, are you back?
Yes, I'm here.
There we go. And so we'll be with you until 6 o'clock this evening. 943-3700 is the line in studio. You can also WhatsApp me at 324-1565, or you can also email me at straighttalkci@gmail.com. We are streaming live from the Star 92.7 Facebook page. Thank you to all those who have it locked in, regardless whether it be by radio or by Facebook. Lots of dialogue coming in on the Facebook feed. Ms. Wendy Clark says, I agree with the line of thinking Alric is mentioning. And going on down here, Jamie Montero says, I think people who are unemployed need to have a second trade, whereas when that sector of the economy is hit by a natural disaster, they can surely fit in the other sector of the economy. I will, just briefly share my thoughts and ask you for yours on that, Alric. I think that this experience has definitely highlighted for us, number one, what industries are, I guess, are recession proof, if you want to call it that. The recession proof industries, the ones we can't do without, the ones that didn't skip a beat. We have things like food and food production, as well as healthcare and emergency services. And then we see what is taking priority, right? The priority industries that we're bringing back online in our own economy. And in every economy, that's going to look different. Development has always been a big one for us. There's a lot more conversation now also about local agriculture, which falls in line with food and food production. But I know that is one of the first things that was highlighted for me. One of the things that Jamie has mentioned is, look, it became so glaringly obvious to me for the first time what industries are truly recession proof. And I would say we saw that in the early phases of food also included alcohol, right? And so those businesses didn't stay closed for long. And I think these are things we have to look at, what never shut down and what's coming online first, so that even if, let's say, your industry of choice is tourism, you have essentially a fallback, right? Another industry where you have skills and experience where you can go and work, should your job and industry of choice be hit even temporarily, right? But what are your thoughts on what Mr. Montero is saying in regarding to people acquiring, a second set of skills as a general rule of thumb? I think is what he's expressing.
I agree with what he's saying. The thing is, it's only Micah Miles that I know about that has a vocational school. So in terms of the opportunity to pursue a second trade, I mean, as far as I know, his is the only approved vocational center where we could get a second trade. And so that if you look in the speeches over the years from the parliament, you will see that it has been discussed, at least from the 1980s, the idea that we need to have a vocational school or a trade school. And it doesn't seem like it really ever happened. So I totally agree that we need to have another avenue, but that avenue needs to be discussed with young people from a time they're in middle school and high school. Just going ahead with your topic, when we look at that type of thing, we're sort of talking about diversification, economic growth and diversification. We need to look at what is a role played by all popular sectors or popular pillars. So financial services, tourism, financial services. What is the role currently played by them, and what happens? What happened during COVID? How were they impacted? So tourism totally decimated. Financial services, yes, was hit, but I also work in financial services. In addition to being a delivery driver, I was still able to continue to work online, by telephone, by email. So financial services, I think, still had the ability to continue. But what I have to say is there may be an idea of something that's recession proof, but nothing is COVID proof. I mean, we've seen that. So look at the roles of the sectors that we currently have, but we also need to think about, in terms of diversification and these second trades that we could develop, we need to think about alternatives in the industry. So you mentioned, agriculture, expanding local agriculture. I think that we should look into expanding agriculture to the furthest extent possible, given the land that we have here and the limited space that we have here. But we should explore it, definitely. The other things that people talked about over the years are stuff like, having a national lottery. A national lottery could be owned by the government. Some of that revenue could go towards infrastructure. Who knows? Could even go into pensions. Who knows? For older people, have a wage that they can actually live on, given the high cost of living in Cayman. So the other thing that people also talk about is, the medical cannabis is legal. And I always wondered, I don't know the numbers, but I always wondered, why is it that we are importing the oil into Cayman? I mean, is it because it's actually cheaper to do it that way? I don't know what the answer is, but I just want to throw it out there that we import so many things. Why couldn't we enhance Cayman as a health tourism destination? And why can't we manufacture? Why can't we consider making it legal to manufacture the cannabis here and making the oil here and making Cayman a destination where people come for health tourism, even for that reason. So we need to look at ways we can enhance what we have and also create other sectors, or enhance other sectors. And the issue is, when we talk about things like COVID, which have such a huge impact on all these sectors, we think about how can we help all these sectors. What other countries have done, like the US and other places where they had a big reserve in place, where they could bail out people and they could give their citizens like $2,000 a month or whatever it is. The thing is, Cayman is not in that kind of position because, number one, we don't have the same structure that those big countries have. We're not able to build up $1 trillion reserve because we don't have that structure. And we probably can't borrow to the same extent that those big countries can borrow in order to bail out their industries or bail out their people. So my first thing would be to enhance what we have, also think about diversification and think about all the industries that we could develop. Obviously, we have to look at what the demand is like, what drives those new ideas that we have for new industries and new sectors. What is the demand like there? And based on what we project the demand to be, we could start to prepare our people to become skilled so that they can take on those opportunities when those projects are in a position to be realized. So, if we do not explore other revenue sources, then, we're going to be in a sad state if England decides to push tax, down our throats. So if we don't think about alternative revenue sources, maybe England will come along and say, you have to have a direct tax. And no one wants to pay about taxes, but they're indirect.
Right. And that topic of conversation continues to come up increasingly, I think, in our dialogue here. A few other comments coming in. Michael Miles shares the website for Cayman Career Academy, which he points out is the only other approved registered center, right? A TVET center. And so he posts that there as well. And I know that the Cayman Career Academy is essentially a school of a tech vocational school institution based more on the beauty industry, and so I know they also launched, and I'm not sure where they're at, but they are the only other registered center. And also we have other comments coming in. Miss Mose herself sending love from the UK, giving shout outs. Hey Mose, how are you doing? Good to see you. Good to hear from you. and definitely I'll touch base with Mr. Jamie after the show because he has volunteered to come on and share his thoughts. Michael Miles also says agriculture can be expanded. We have the Botanic Park and the agriculture department that can lead this. And then we have Miss Yvette coming in saying we are expected to live here and make it regardless of the financial situation, but we have the least input in how the system can be improved. DOT and other agencies should also be involved in these discussions, along with much needed public consultations, i.e. town hall meetings, district meetings, in order to chart our future in this COVID reset period. We as a people have been ignored because we are not educated, i.e. the tour guides, restaurant workers, retail owners, farmers, etc. Yet that segment of our population are the people on the front lines who are the most affected in these times of crisis. It has a trickle-down effect. If any segment of the population cannot feed and take care of basic needs, they are seen as a society burden and depend on government assistance, which affects every one of us in some way, shape, or form. Caymanians are a proud people and would rather starve than depend on assistance of any kind. That from Miss Yvette. And to what Miss Yvette is saying, I think there's a two-prong situation. Now, over the last, I would say 18 months or so, I think we the people, have taken on a much more active role in the dialogue in our societies. And so I think we have to look at both sides. Yeah, governments and institutions, government institutions, and MLAs and leaders in general have to be willing to start their discussions by going to the public, right, and getting a gauge on what the public may want, as we go along. However, we seem to keep doing it in the reverse, but I hope that all that has happened over the cruise birthing, Smith Bacadere, and other things has taught this and successive governments that you need to go to the people first. And then when the opportunity comes in front of us, we need to engage as well in discussion. And I don't mean the small few, right? That more, and yes, I think that CPR and the Smith Bacadere set the stage for more public engagement, but we need to continue that even at the most minute level, because over the years, one thing I remember when I saw the tunnel going up on 7 Mile Beach Road, right? The connector from Cayman Bay. I remember having to take a look at myself and saying, because I didn't want to just criticize and say, oh, they did it without public consultation. And when I went back and looked, there was a lot of noise once the tunnels started to go up. But when you looked back at it, they had done their part in trying to engage the public around these projects and what that whole project looked like, right? I just don't think that we, the public, had stepped forward and been as actively involved as you see us involved at this time. And I hope that the cruise birthing and Smith Bacadere was only the beginning of our public engagement. And so I think that it is that we have to make sure that we continue that level of public discourse when the opportunities come to us, and that we don't just wait for projects to be way down the line before we get upset and then engage at that time. So I think it's two-pronged. They need to come to us and we need to also go to them and continue on in what we're doing. Any thoughts from you around that?
Sure. I mean, my thing is I want to look at what's really happening. What's really happening is that policy decisions are driven by those with the loudest voices. Mm-hmm. And so if certain sectors get together and approach the government, then they become the loudest voice, and they sit at the table and they get the input into how Cayman is going to look, how Cayman is going to be shaped. Mm-hmm. To the point where we're at right now, where we're talking about a possible reopening in certain sectors, and it may be phased in differently for different sectors. This is the point that we need to get involved. So if other sectors are getting involved by putting their CEOs out there, their directors and their partners in the room with the policymakers. Everyone has an interest going into this room or sitting at this table. So what I think is the same movement, collective movement that we had with Smith Barcadere and CPR, we need to have that same collective movement when it comes to the reopening of Cayman. So when you talk about, these other jobs that you still need to do when there's a recession, when there's COVID, when there's a pandemic, plumbers, electricians, AC, all these guys still need to work because something's going to go wrong with your pipes. Something's going to go wrong with your car. Something's going to go wrong, with some of the lights in your home. Mm-hmm. We really need to, have people retooled and prepared for those areas. But to get there, I think we need to let the government know collectively that these things are important for us generally, and specifically for us to be skilled and us to be in a position where we can explore another opportunity in the event that we have a COVID or we have a recession. And the other thing I would add there is that I think that if government is not going to set up a trade school itself, then the government should consider giving scholarships for people to attend these trade schools. That is to say that, the government should make these trade schools basically free for people to develop their skills. Mm-hmm. It's in the end, it's a benefit for the country. It's a benefit for the individual to be skilled, and it's a benefit for the country because that person will be able to continue to contribute during a COVID or during
no matter what. Okay, so Johan Moxham says, if CIG were interested in assisting Cayman tour and water sports operators, they would have done so over the years. It has been proven that the current elected government were prepared to represent the interests of the cruise lines, example Carnival and Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines, yet did not take the opportunity to help Caymanian-owned tourism ambassadors in the on-island tours and water sports industry. They failed to represent the views of their constituents and the Caymanian-owned tour and water sports operators, #stay woke. And he also shared a CNS article into the stream as well that was to do with this line of conversation, and that is an article yesterday. QC stresses on truths over port marine damage. Now read a tidbit of that to give, and anyone who wants to read it in its entirety can certainly click the link that's in the feed. But it starts off by saying the Cayman Islands government engaged in what was little short of a propaganda campaign, misleading, and this is a CNS article, misleading the public about the impact the proposed cruise port development would have on the marine environment. A lawyer representing the National Trust argued last week. Tim Lowe QC told the appeal court that the trust was shocked by this because it was not just a few falsehoods, but a wholly imbalanced, misleading campaign masquerading as objective. Lowe took part in an appeal last week brought by government to overturn the decisions of Justice Tim Owen earlier this year. The judge had found that government's referendum law, which was passed in the wake of a successful petition to vote on the port project, was unconstitutional. So he posted that link as well. Now, I want to, and I think that is something that many of the tour operators have that I've spoken to have shared quite openly. I think is that this has been a slow boat, I think, over years and years, where more and more they get less and less of the pie, right? And have not been supported by CIG to get more than they had been getting. Kathy Ann Wilkes also says, I agree with you on growing new industries, all that you have mentioned. In relation to agriculture, there is lots of crown land which could be leased to give Caymanians an opportunity to start farming. And I have a couple of comments I want to read, but to Kathy Ann's point, do you think that's a viable option for them to lease crown land to Caymanians to be able to start, small scale or large scale farms for themselves to enter into the industry?
Yes, but it's not solely agriculture. I think we could also think about fish farming. I had a friend, Benji Borden, who had a fish farm many years ago. but I think that was destroyed because of Hurricane Ivan. But definitely, I mean, the hurricane is always going to be a risk, but not just agriculture, but also fish farming. So if government has that land, yes, I do think it's feasible. But let's think about both things, not just agriculture, but also fish farming as well.
Okay, and Johan Moxham continues on and says, it's about strength in numbers, plus having a plan, plus commitment to the cause by working together in order to have the policymakers and elected government understand we will not accept the status quo and lack of representation, which only factors in a handle of friends, supporters, family members, and political financiers that own and control the politicians. So that also from Johan Moxham. Do you think that to his point, do you think that the public is engaging at a high enough level at this point?
No, and I cannot blame the people for not engaging at a higher level. Why? Because everybody's struggling, everybody's suffering, everybody's thinking about, will my my sector open up soon? Why are they thinking about that? Because they want to be in a position where they can provide for themselves and for their family. And, they want to make sure that they get to keep their job. So people's minds are so consumed with all the difficulties and all the struggles of COVID-19 that they're not really thinking about, this doesn't look right what the government is doing, or they're not really questioning all the details. People are at the moment so consumed with so much stress that they're thinking, I just want to get out of this, I just want to get over this, I just want to get through this. That's what people are thinking about. So I do not blame the people for not engaging the government and the policies and the actions and the transparency and whatever else at the level that they normally do without COVID or without any other disaster. Had there been no disaster, then people would have paid a lot more attention to the details, and people would have questioned certain things. But right now we have so much stress. People are don't have jobs. People don't have food. There's some basics that people don't have, and they're worried about their mortgage, their light bill. Whether they're going to get some of their pension, what's going to happen with that money, what's going to happen if they leave it in the pension plan? Is the market going to fall more, and are they going to lose another $15,000 next week? So people are really just their mind is just blown at all worries.
Yeah.
We're not engaged to the level that we should be, but I don't blame the people because we are struggling.
Correct. And Michael Miles says, I would like to see Caymanians become outraged of the high levels of poverty, welfare, and lack of education. While it's important, we only seem to become outraged of environmental factors and or the LGBTQ issues. And I will, as Johan Moxham responds to that saying #facts, I will do the same because I do believe that we do need to be very vocal about the level of welfare that's not spoken of in this country, and to ensure that we are moving in a direction that in a country where so much money circulates in our economy, that there should never be this level of welfare. And I completely agree. And my mother comes in and says, thank you both for keeping us informed. Now, Alric, we are 2 minutes shy of the 6 o'clock hour. So I would like to give you opportunity for final thoughts before we close up the show this afternoon.
Like I say, there are just 4 main areas for me. One is basically the economy, thinking about economic growth, diversification, thinking about the roles of current sectors, how we can enhance those, how we can introduce new sectors for new revenue sources. Then thinking about human capital. Let's make sure our public schools don't continue to fail. Let's make available that avenue for vocational training, so people can have a second trade during these tough conditions with the jobs that will continue, like electrical, plumbing, AC, etc. And then productivity and competitiveness. We saw that one of the big things that a lot of business didn't have was online, a simple thing like an online presence. Some people didn't have that. And so it was difficult to continue some of those services. And the last one that we didn't really talk about was the environmental preparedness. So we need to make sure that we always have strict building code compliance, strict compliance with environmental laws, that we have an adequate environmental fund in the future to deal with these issues as they occur. So those are my four main areas, basically, which are basically economic, human capital, productivity and competition, and environmental preparedness. So, if we can get rid of Mount Trashmore, we can get the plastics. I'm ready to go, man. I just want everyone to get on board. I know you're stressed, but let's just work together and let's try to make people know what our value is and come together collectively and make the policymakers hear our voice and give us a seat at the table.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing those thoughts. A few last comments that have come in. I'll read them, but I won't have time to offer commentary to them. Jamie says, also, one more thing that is affecting us is the prices at the pump. Hope these prices can be changed. Jamie, what I will say is I was very excited to pay $3.99 last week, Friday, at Rubis on Eastern Avenue. And Johan says, has anyone outside of a handful of special persons seen or been asked to contribute in the discussions to the plan for the economic recovery phase being led by the Minister of Commerce? We all have concerns, and this pandemic has impacted us all, yet we are all in the dark. It's all as if we don't matter unless you are a member of the cocktail circuit or a diehard supporter or friend. The concerns of the majority and skills and expertise of the majority are being ignored because of the tired games of politics. Guys, thank you so much. Alric, thank you for joining me this afternoon. It was a pleasure to have you as always. And thank you all for continuing to tune in each and every afternoon. I'll be back again tomorrow right here at 5 o'clock sharp for some more Straight Talk on Star 92.7. I love you guys, and please stay safe.